Hello, I'm Lindy Prickett, and this is 3D, the Development Design Digest. One of the crucial processes in development is trial and error, especially in a vast and varied country like India, where what works in one state might not work in another state, let alone district or block. And that's why monitoring and evaluation is a crucial building block to any development plan. And one of India's leading monitoring and evaluation practices is Sambodhi, based here in New Delhi. And joining me today from Sambodhi for this 3D look at design and development is the co-founder and director of Sambodhi Communications and Research, Swapnil Shekhar. Swapnil, thank you so much for joining us today. Sambodhi started almost 20 years ago, in 2006. India and the world was a completely different place back then. Yeah. Let's start at the beginning and tell me, why was Sambodhi created? What was the need that you were fulfilling?
2006 was that was the time when development aid and its effectiveness was something that was in conversations, getting into conversation. And we as practitioners in the field, we felt the need to have scientifically designed methods to assess a developmental impact effectiveness. So that was the genesis of Sambodhi. We started at a place where development effectiveness was measured through processes which were not very scientific in nature. And we thought that's a business opportunity for us, and we started there. So it's like 20 years. We would be sort of starting our 20th year in a month's time.
Congratulations. Because studies have shown, right, in the last 20 or 30 years with behavioral economics, with psychology and sociology, that humans are deeply flawed. Yeah. And what we think instinctually is a good project or a good idea might be covered in all sorts of biases. So that's why you have to actually evaluate it and find out, is it actually working? Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And you're not just saying an overall, is it working, but you're digging deep into various different factors and elements. Can you talk me through the process of what evaluating an initiative might look like?
Yeah, so in fact, this is a good cue for me to in fact talk to you about journey of evaluation and how evaluation science has evolved in a country like India. So the focus in early days of evaluation, especially in context of India or context of Sambodhi, was on ex post evaluation. By that I mean, so you have an investment, a development investment that has happened through government, through aid agencies, through the bank, and we would be called in to do an ex post measurement of effectiveness of that aid.
Okay.
Say if the aid was meant to sort of reduce poverty, so right, we would come in and assess whether poverty measures have improved or not.
Okay.
So this is one part of evaluation, and this continues. So India is no more sort of a aid dependent country, but we have different sources of development investment. Government is the biggest one. But the way evaluation has evolved is that dependence on ex post evaluation has reduced over the last 15 years. So we have what we call as more, or in fact, still an emerging need to give real-time assessment of what is happening on the ground, and that would essentially mean to or target it at improving program delivery.
Okay.
So it's not only ex post, it is also during the course of intervention now, and in fact, we are also looking at preemptive measures of impact. So what about prospecting impact? What about looking at what is the impact potential of a particular intervention? The entire sector has changed. It's no more an ex post evaluation discipline. It's like spread across the entire project cycle now.
So ex post being after the fact, let's see how it
Absolutely.
did. Let's give you a report card.
Yeah.
And instead what you're saying is, before we actually fund you, we're going to look and see about the viability of this.
Yes.
Interesting. That feels like more business practices being brought into development. Because that's what a business would do. If you're going to invest something, you're going to do due diligence. A firm is going to do due diligence before they dump crores of rupees into a project.
Yeah, so this is something that we need to also look into through return on investment lens. So why would you invest, even if it's social development investment, why would you invest in something that would not yield you social returns? So when do you assess that? You need to have a kind of you should be informed before you do that decision. So that's where our role also comes in. So an agency like Sambodhi would be expected to provide prospective measures of impact as well for any kind of impact decision making.
Okay, that's interesting. And you mentioned the government. Many NGOs rely on their funding from the government, especially in a country like India, especially in rural areas. But you work with mostly other philanthropic organizations, right? And also with investors. You've got businesses who are interested in CSR, which is huge now, but all the buzz is about impact investment. Is that right? Is that a new area, or is this just a new term for old funding?
So, development sector, so investors in development, sort of, it's a huge ecosystem. So, government being the biggest one, and for us, government is the most important client. But having said that, we also are quite invested in engaging with, say, global philanthropies, with CSR, with impact investors. So the syntax of evaluation or need of evaluation changes with the client that we have. So government, it's usually large scale exposed quantitative measurements that happen. In the recent times, where we have also seen government has opened up to the idea of having longer term associations with people like us, where they would expect real time feedback from the field, and also engage us with us exposed.
Real time feedback. I just want to pause there for a second.
Real time feedback, because of digitization that has happened on the ground, you do collect data real time. The idea would be to call people like us to improve the data structures, make sure that data feedback goes to the right people, and decisions are informed.
And when you say decisions are informed, that means that in real time, an initiative can pivot and change. Go, oh, this isn't working.
Ideally it should. Ideally, it should, and it happens as well. Many of the decisions are not usually based on data. You also know. So it's there are several factors for any kind of decision making, both at the state level, and also at non-state actors. But beyond government, we definitely work with philanthropies like the Gates Foundation or Rockefeller Foundation. Their investments are huge, and so are the M&E mandates, or monitoring, learning, and evaluation mandates. So we are engaged right from the very beginning, that is design of investment to the closure of investments. We are there throughout. The new something that is new to us in this domain is, of course, how CSR organizations and impact investors are taking data. By data, I mean social data, or data, or impact data. Personally, I have not been quite sort of enthused with the way sector has behaved when it comes to CSR or impact investment, and their data need when it comes to social matrix.
So, and why?
Say, if you look at impact investments, there are several metrics around the world which talks about how do you embed social indicators in your business sort of matrix. So how they should work together. So they should mutually inform each other. But what I have personally visualized is many of the impact investment decisions are based on idea than absolute impact measure. And once the investment has happened, then I don't see engaging with indicator or social indicators matter much. So investment has already happened. So what usually matters is then the business matrix would drive the growth, not the social matrix. So from where I see, social metrics have to be somewhere embedded within the thinking of a social enterprise than actually a sort of afterthought, which is usually the case. So I definitely see in the time to come, the next couple of years, I see that there is a kind of a narrative building in where we have people like us are sort of kind of advocating that your social matrix can also reinforce your business matrix. So it cannot be taken as a responsibility for yourself, for running a business. It can inform your business. It can make your business more robust.
Can you give me an example of this, like a real life? Either you can choose from the canon of work that you do, or just give me a for instance, so that we can unpack this a bit.
So if there is an impact investment in energy access, in say solar lighting, solar lighting should be affordable, if that is the hypothesis on which the business model is built on. It has to be equitable. It should give equal opportunities for everyone to buy. So it has to be priced in a way that the last mile also buys. So what if you're only looking at business metrics?
Okay.
You're only looking at the number of solar lamps sold. You're not looking at who is buying the solar lamps.
Right.
The business model was essentially based on the last mile, whether people who do not have access to electricity through the day are filling in that gap using solar lantern.
Right.
So if you're not informing this to your business model, at the end of the day, there would be a point where your business model would not be targeting people who actually want it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there is a need to be more informed using metrics which are socially conscious, which inform your business model, which make your business model more robust in nature.
So are you saying that you provide this data, you give this data, but sometimes there's a reluctance on the client's part to perhaps understand it or heed the messages you're trying to give?
Yes, it is. I'd also call a level of arrogance, call it a level of arrogance, because uh, impact measurement from where most of the impact investments would see would essentially gloss it over. So you don't have that intent to measure social matrix if your business is flourishing. So it doesn't matter whom are you targeting. It doesn't matter whether whether the model that was based on equitable access is actually ensuring equitable access. So this has a deeper sort of philosophical underpinning more than anything else. So we need to so I have taken a kind of a backseat, and I try to convince people that social matrix can inform your business model. It would enrich your business model. It is no way something that is redundant. So it can be embedded in your own sort of business thinking as well.
Okay.
One should not treat it something that comes from some external source. Yeah.
I guess the flip side might also be true, that while data is great and helps you better inform your decisions, is there sometimes is there sometimes a feeling from the people working on the ground and the beneficiaries that they're shackled by the data, that they know what's happening on the ground, but because the data point ABC has indicated that it's going slightly 40 degrees off center, their work is being changed because of data. Is there ever a resistance to this data on the ground?
Huge resistance, and rightly so. So we as M&E providers, we are considered as external to intervention. So say a civil society organization which is implementing a program on the ground, and we are there to evaluate them. So there would be a resistance. Yeah? So, but the fact is that evaluation has also we as evaluators have also changed the way we work. So, so it's our responsibility to engage with the implementers more, build in that trust that we are there not to assess their performance. We are there from a learning perspective more than anything else. Our engagement would make sure that they implement the program better. So there's a fine line to it. While we talk about independence of evaluators, we also talk about empathy of evaluators. We need to engage more with the implementation and understand and bring that confidence in implementation.
So you don't come in with your sharp suits and your tablets and laptops into the field sort of pointing fingers.
No, we had to change. I can remember the early days of evaluation when we started off. It was very much like that. So yeah, our engagement was episodic in nature. We would come in, we would not appreciate the context as much as we should have had done. So now things have changed. We have also realized that implementation is a complex animal. So for us to unpack implementation on a flying visit to the field is impossible. So you need to be more empathetic to the story behind impact. It's not only the number that would tell you the story. You have to be there to understand the story.
And just talking about some of the nuts and bolts for a minute, when you do this evaluation, it's in the field, or sometimes it's on the phone, or sometimes it's looking at government or other data collected by other agencies, and you're doing the number crunching. Is it a mix of all of that? Have I missed something?
No, it's a mix of all of that. And if you look at our own journey, we have evolved from a pure primary data-based evaluation firm to a firm which deploys many other methods. The new sort of talking point these days is how do you use public intent data for evaluation.
Okay.
By that I mean that so you know that government houses huge data sets, and with digitization
Government
happen,
house is huge.
data sets, yes,
Yes.
program implementation data set. For example, so sort of National Rural Employment Program. So they have one of the largest data sets in the world, yeah, and near real time data sets that they have. So the idea here is not to duplicate data collection. If you have data sets available, one can engage with that data set to evaluate, or if not evaluate, at least provide necessary feedback for program implementation. Government has opened up to the idea, and the basic challenge, the fundamental challenge is how do we make sure that data structures are amenable to evaluations from people like us or if from independent agency. So that is much more structural work, systemic work that we need to that needs to be done. In the last few years, in fact, PRIF and Sambodhi, we have done some.
I was just going to say that, because you have this wealth of data.
Yeah.
TRI has connections, has worked long with governments and central and state governments, so has a good working relationship. You unlock this data and you guys then crunch it.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you're coming up with, and that was the inception for the Development Intelligence Units, DIU, also part of this series. So tell me a little bit about some of the challenges working in this area. I want to hear about the successes too, but first, what are the challenges working in data and evaluation in rural development?
I'll name a few. So, if you look at data historically in the state-owned data ecosystem, their state is the jury, state is the judge. So you collect data, and based on the data that is collected, you also determine the results. So that has been the case. But and this has also been true because there has been time lag in from the time data gets collected and the time data gets analyzed for as information or insights.
Right.
So there has been huge time lags.
Right.
But in the recent times, we have seen with sort of digitization up to the last mile, data collection has been more rapid.
Okay.
And for that, data gets reported on time. But the challenge is we don't use the data as much as we want to. I have never been a huge fan of dashboards because dashboards are a way to, dashboards
so
are
popular.
Absolutely, because dashboards are a way to distract most of the time because you don't use data. If you're using data through dashboards, nothing like that.
Okay.
So from where I see, appreciation of data is one of the challenges that I see, not only in state but otherwise at non-state actors as well. We collect data because we have to collect data. That has changed. That is changing in large sort of health systems work that we are doing or employment work that we are doing. We see that our state is also using data as much as we want to. So this was one of the challenges that we have encountered all our life.
Right.
Why don't you use data? Yeah.
Right.
Second is, of course, the a much more cultural thing of what I call is like, if you own something, you don't want to share it. You don't want to reuse it.
Okay.
I don't know what would be the right term for it.
Possessiveness.
Or you treat it as an asset which can't be shared.
Right.
But one has to understand data is a kind of what do you call it? A kind of asset which doesn't diminish after reuse as well.
Okay.
You can keep on using it, keep on harnessing it.
Right.
That's the beauty of data. It's not like land.
It's
not
the knowledge is power versus open source innovation debate, right?
Yeah. So very sort of it's different from other factors of production, no? So it's also an input, but land can diminish. Resources can diminish, data cannot diminish.
Right.
It can be reused, it can be repurposed.
Okay.
So this is something that I don't see happening in many stakeholders. So this is a mental block that if I own data, I should not be sharing data with anyone.
Right.
This also is because we as a ecosystem has not created sort of robust legal or legal frameworks which can safeguard misuse or manhandling of data.
Right.
That's also a work in progress. Once it is done, I think the fact that people do not share data, we see duplication of data collection, you would see that you would see in the same geography, say for example in Jharkhand, you would see surveys happening in the same area on same indicators by different agencies because we don't share data. So this is something a huge
It's
mindset shift that we need to sort of look into.
it's so wasteful. It's
It's
such
so
a
wasteful.
waste of talent, time, resources.
Yes, yes.
Um,
So we have been talking about creating data collaboratives as well,
okay.
because we expect government to create collaboratives, but at the end of the day, if you see beyond the state as well, you do not have movers who are talking about, can we as non-state actors look into creating data collaboratives on our own as well, where we can share data, we can have protocols through which we can share data. That would make sure the data becomes cheap, data becomes more accessible, and you don't and also there are measures to reuse, repurpose data sets.
Okay. Interesting. I'm glad you gave an example there. I want a couple more real life examples of where data and evaluation has come in and actually changed the path that was going the wrong direction, which nobody thought, because again, our instincts and our biases say, oh, this is correct. But actually, because of some data and evaluation and monitoring, you were able to show a client, if you change it a little this direction or you make these changes, you can have much bigger impact. Do you have some examples of that?
Uh, One of the brightest example from our early days of Sambodhi is from watersheds. In fact, we used
A
to
what?
watershed investments
Okay.
in eastern India. So essentially in Orissa and Jharkhand, and there were investments in watershed development, and we used to evaluate these programs. In fact, that was the time when national watershed guidelines were coming in and were getting revised. Our evaluation was fed into the watershed guidelines, and the watershed guidelines that we see today has been informed by our evaluation, the work that we have done in Orissa, especially.
Okay.
So that has been a huge sort of motivation for us as well, because we also understand at the end of the day, for an evaluator, the highest point for an evaluator's life is informing or engaging with the policy. If our work informs policy, nothing like that.
Right.
So this was one of the examples. In the recent times, we have
And
worked.
what was the shift that you were able to show needed to happen to be more effective?
So the shift was around how do you sort of make watershed development much more all-encompassing. So it's not only watershed development. What are the tertiary or secondary activities that can come along with watershed development? So
Okay. Okay.
then our work with health systems in UP, and that has over the last 12 years, it's like it continues now as well, has informed a lot when it comes to systems improvement in a state like UP. So this is also one of our high points from Sambodhi's perspective. Uh, and there are other sectors as well where we see, especially like sectors like education technology, in sectors like energy access. We see that our work has contributed a lot in developing the field of practice in a country like India. Yeah.
Interesting. We talked a little bit about the challenges and now the successes, but is there a mindset shift that you think needs to change in order to make better use of monitoring and evaluation data and to improve policy, to improve programs, to improve people's lives?
Uh, Mindset change has been happening. Yeah?
Okay.
So we've also moved from where we were. We started the conversation from exposed to real-time evaluation. That's a mindset change over the last 15 years. Mindset change has to happen in non-state actors as much, investors as much. I'll bring back the conversation around CSR and impact investments and other private sector actors as well, where I see uh, mindset has to change with respect to how do you value data coming in from social indices. So I go back to my original point that we need to see mindset change in the way evaluation is treated. It is not only a kind of a regulatory commitment that one has. It can enrich your program. It can inform your program. You can use data for improving your program delivery as well. So this mindset change has to happen. One thing that is closest to my heart is talking about failures using data. So
Talking about,
failures using data.
interesting.
So we are social sector, especially we are quite guarded about our failures. We do not discuss failures. Sort of like 10 years or 12 years now that we conceptualized a workshop around failures,
Interesting.
and we did not see participants because no one turned up to talk about failure.
Right.
Data is there to talk
Can,
about.
can you change that by saying learnings? Isn't that the new way
We use the term learning, but
nobody bought it.
but people can unpack learning and understand what's the conversation about. But these days, I see people. There are stakeholders who have started talking about failures.
Okay.
The reason I brought it up is that we have to treat monitoring, learning, and evaluation as a practice which talks about learning more than anything else. So once we, in fact, embody learning as a principle of MEL, then things would be easier. So it's a huge mindset change, that a shift that we need to see. But I think we would be there.
Trial and error. Piloting programs and pivoting when needed.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a change in rural India in the last 15, 20 years? And do you think any of it's down to the work that you do to trying to inform better policy making and better spending of CSR money, because you've been able to sort of open the lid on certain issues or shift the gears a little in different practices?
I may not have a holistic view to it, but my view would be sort of limited to my work. But I definitely see data has been a kind of a trigger to better implementation, much more accountable implementation. By that I mean, if one of the largest welfare programs like rural employment program is driven by day-to-day data, then I definitely believe that it would make sure, or it would ensure better accountability, better targeting, ensuring equity in distribution. So that I see as a lever, and data playing a key role towards that. Beyond that, I definitely see rural India to be more aware about rights, entitlements, and there is and data or information has played a key role towards it.
Okay, wonderful. Where do you see India in 2047, particularly rural India?
I hope to see it more equitable.
Yeah. And presumably that's why you got into this line of work in the first place?
Yeah, I hope data makes sure that, or sort of ensures that we are more equitable as a society.
I think that's a perfect place to end it there today. Thank you so much, Swapnil Shekhar. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Please listen and like and share and tune in for the next 3D Development Design Digest. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.